The night is quiet now. Somewhere far away, beyond the noise of the modern world, beyond glowing cities and restless screens, an ancient desert lies sleeping under silver moonlight. And hidden beneath those endless sands are stories so strange, so mysterious, and so beautiful that for thousands of years people whispered them beside flickering firelight. Tonight you are about to drift into the world of forgotten Egyptian gods, sacred tombs, wandering souls, and the endless journey through the afterlife. But before your eyes grow heavy and your dreams begin to wander down the Nile, take a gentle moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and settle comfortably beneath your blankets. And whenever you feel ready, you can simply stop staring at the screen now. Just listen quietly. Think of this as a soft, late-night audiobook, a peaceful journey filled with ancient knowledge, calm storytelling, and gentle mysteries designed to help your mind slow down and relax. So there is no need to focus too hard. No need to stay awake. Just rest comfortably. Listen softly in the background and let the stories carry you towards sleep. Maybe dim the lights. Maybe close your eyes and let these ancient stories carry you softly into sleep. Long before modern cities existed, before airplanes crossed the skies, before clocks, phones, or electric lights, the people of ancient Egypt believed the universe itself was alive. The stars were not simply stars. They were eternal souls. The sun was not merely a burning object in the sky. It was a god sailing through heaven. And death was not the end. It was only the beginning of a very long journey. The ancient Egyptians lived beside the Nile River, a ribbon of life winding through endless desert sands. Every year, the river flooded the land, leaving behind rich black soil. To the Egyptians, this miracle felt magical. The river gave them food, water, and survival. Life. Rebirth. And there were many gods, hundreds of them. Knowledge. That is why tomb walls were covered in sacred writing. Why scrolls were buried beside the dead. And why mummies were prepared with such extraordinary care. The Egyptians believed the soul had several parts. One part was called the Ka. The Ka represented a person's life force. Another part was called the Ba. The Ba could travel between worlds. Artists often painted it as a bird with a human head. And then there was the Ak, the transformed spirit that could live forever among the gods. For all of this to work properly, the body needed to remain preserved. That is why mummification became so important. The process itself took many weeks. Priests carefully washed the body. Organs were removed and stored in special jars. The brain was often extracted through the nose using delicate hooks. Then the body was covered in natron salt to dry it completely. After many days, the body was wrapped in layers of linen. Amulets were placed between the wrappings for protection. Finally, a beautiful mask might be added, especially for royalty. The Egyptians believed this careful preservation allowed the soul to recognize its body in the afterlife. Without a preserved body, the journey beyond death could become dangerous. And perhaps no Egyptian afterlife story was more important than the story of Osiris. Osiris was the god of the underworld. But he had once been a living king, according to legend. Osiris ruled Egypt wisely alongside his wife Isis. People were happy. He announced that whoever fit perfectly inside the chest could keep it. Many guests tried, but only Osiris fit exactly. The chest was sealed. and Osiris was thrown into the Nile.
Yet she refused to give up. Not as a living king on earth.
Green fields, calm waters, gentle breezes, abundant harvests. It was a perfected version of earthly life. Eternal comfort beside the Nile. The Egyptians loved cats deeply. And naturally, cats became connected with divinity. One famous cat goddess was Bastet. Originally, she appeared as a fierce lioness warrior. But over time, she became associated with domestic cats, protection, motherhood, and home life. Families often kept cats as beloved companions. Hurting a cat could bring severe punishment. When household cats died, families sometimes mourned deeply. Some even shaved their eyebrows as a sign of grief. Temples dedicated to Bastet became centers of celebration. Music, dance, perfume, festivals. Thousands gathered to honor the gentle feline goddess. Meanwhile, another goddess ruled the skies. Nut, the goddess of heaven. The Egyptians imagined Nut arching over the earth like a vast star-filled figure. Her body formed the night sky itself. Each evening she swallowed the sun, and each dawn she gave birth to it again. It was a poetic explanation for the cycle of day and night. And honestly, it still feels strangely beautiful. The earth god beneath her was Geb. Ancient Egyptian myths often focused on balance. Order against chaos. Light against darkness. Life against death. The idea was central to Egyptian thinking.
Even pharaohs were expected to maintain balance within the kingdom.
Pharaohs were not seen merely as kings. Others believed they joined Ra aboard the solar boat. Massive pyramids were built partly to help pharaohs ascend into eternity. A flowing language of symbols. For centuries, the meaning of hieroglyphics was lost. People could see the symbols, but no longer understood them. Then, in 1799, something extraordinary was discovered. The Rosetta Stone. This black stone contained the same text written in multiple scripts. Eventually, scholars decoded hieroglyphics, and suddenly, ancient Egyptian voices could speak again after thousands of silent years. Imagine forgotten words sleeping for centuries beneath the sands, only to awaken again. Another fascinating god was Sobek, the crocodile god. Crocodiles were both feared and respected along the Nile. They could remain perfectly still before suddenly attacking with terrifying force. To ancient Egyptians, crocodiles seemed ancient and powerful. Temples dedicated to Sobek sometimes kept sacred crocodiles in pools. Some were decorated with jewels and carefully fed by priests. When these crocodiles died, they too were mummified. In fact, Egyptians mummified many animals: cats, dogs, birds, monkeys, crocodiles, even bulls. Animals were deeply connected to spirituality. One sacred bull was known as Apis. The Apis bull represented strength and divine power. Priests searched carefully for bulls with special markings, believed to identify them as sacred. Once chosen, the bull lived in luxury. People traveled long distances to see it. When it died, it received elaborate burial rituals. Ancient Egypt was filled with rituals. Mourning rituals, temple rituals. Offered food, burned incense. To outsiders, it may seem unusual.
She was often shown with cow horns holding the solar disk.
Temples dedicated to Hathor were places of music and celebration.
And music itself was considered sacred.
Flutes.
The desert itself played a major role in Egyptian imagination.
The dry sands helped preserve bodies naturally.
The Egyptians believed names held tremendous power.
To speak someone's name was to keep them alive.
That is partly why pharaohs carved their names everywhere.
Temples, monuments, statues. As long as the name survived, a part of the soul survived too. Perhaps this explains why people still speak the names of ancient rulers thousands of years later.
Ramesses,
Cleopatra, Akhenaten, Tutankhamun. Their names continue echoing through history.
Akhenaten was one of Egypt's strangest pharaohs. He attempted something radical.
Instead of worshiping many gods, he promoted the worship of one sun deity called Aten. This deeply changed Egyptian religion for a time. Temples closed. Old gods lost importance. But after Akhenaten died, Egypt largely returned to its traditional beliefs. Still, historians remain fascinated by his unusual reign. Ancient Egyptian medicine was surprisingly advanced. Doctors used herbs, bandages, honey, and surgical tools. Honey, especially, was valuable because of its natural antibacterial properties. Some Egyptian medical practices were effective. Others mixed medicine with magic. Spells and prayers often accompanied treatments. To Egyptians, the physical and spiritual worlds were connected. Dreams were also important. The Nile River itself was almost sacred. Too little flooding meant famine. The god Hapi represented the Nile's fertility and abundance. Without the Nile,
Ancient Egypt could never have existed.
The Milky Way stretches overhead like silver dust.
Believed certain stars or souls of the dead.
Astronomy helped Egyptians track seasons and create calendars.
Perhaps sacred. Jewelry held symbolic meaning too. Scarabs were especially important. The scarab beetle rolls balls of dung across the ground. To Egyptians, this resembled the movement of the sun across the sky. The scarab became a symbol of rebirth and transformation. People wore scarab amulets for protection and luck. Some were buried with giant scarab carvings placed over the heart. Ancient Egyptian children also learned stories about gods from a young age. They grew up hearing myths beside the Nile. Stories about brave gods, jealous gods, loving goddesses, terrifying monsters. These stories helped explain the world. Why storms happened, why people died, why the sun moved, why crops grew. In many ways, mythology gave structure to uncertainty. And perhaps humans still search for stories to make sense of life. One of the stranger Egyptian beliefs involved shadows. Some Egyptians believed the shadow was an important part of the soul. Shadows seemed mysterious, always following, always attached, yet impossible to hold.
So, naturally, they became linked with spiritual identity.
Mirrors were also considered magical by some. Reflections seemed almost supernatural.
It must have felt extraordinary. Many Egyptian temples were enormous archaeological masterpieces. Massive stone columns carved with lotus flowers.
Long pathways lined with statues. Some temples were aligned carefully with the stars or sun.
One famous temple dedicated to Abu Simbel was built by Ramesses II. Huge statues of the pharaoh guard its entrance.
Even today, they inspire awe.
Roman emperors decorated their homes with Egyptian symbols.
Perhaps that combination explains the beauty of their civilization. They built for forever. Stone instead of wood. Monuments instead of temporary shelters. Tombs filled with objects for the next world. Everything reflected hope for continuity beyond death. One especially touching detail is that many tomb paintings show ordinary, joyful moments. Families sharing meals. Musicians playing instruments. People fishing. Children running. The Egyptians did not imagine paradise as something completely alien. They imagined eternal happiness as a peaceful continuation of life's best moments. There is something deeply human about that. Even their monsters carried symbolism. Serpents represented chaos. Hybrid creatures guarded sacred spaces. Demons tested courage and purity. The underworld journey reflected the challenges of existence itself. To survive required wisdom, truth, and balance. And balance was everything. Too much chaos threatened order. Too much pride angered the gods. Harmony mattered.
Perhaps that is another reason Egyptian stories still resonate today.
People everywhere search for balance between work and rest, between fear and hope, between ambition and peace. Ancient Egyptians also valued silence in sacred spaces. Temple chambers grew darker and quieter toward the center.
Only priests could enter certain holy rooms.
The scent of myrrh and cedar,
Whispered prayers disappearing into darkness. Although scholars can reconstruct parts of it, many details remain uncertain.
They feared death.
They hoped for love.
And as the ancient winds continue drifting across the endless desert, the night grows softer still. The stars above Egypt once guided travelers through complete darkness, long before modern roads. Long before cities glowed with electric light, people crossed the silent sands beneath constellations that seemed almost close enough to touch. The desert sky was their map, their compass, their companion. And perhaps that is why the Egyptians felt such a deep connection to the heavens. The stars never rushed. The moon moved patiently. The sun always returned. Everything followed a rhythm, a calm and endless rhythm. The Nile River followed its own rhythm too. Each year, the waters rose gently across the land, bringing rich black soil, bringing life, bringing food to the people living along its shores. To the Egyptians, the Nile was not simply a river. It was a gift, a living miracle flowing quietly through the heart of the desert. Without it, ancient Egypt may never have existed at all. Imagine standing beside the Nile thousands of years ago at night. The air warm and still. Tall reeds swaying softly beside the water. Tiny insects humming in the darkness. The reflection of stars shimmering across slow-moving currents. Perhaps small wooden boats drifted silently nearby. Perhaps distant temple fires flickered against the horizon. And somewhere in the darkness, priests whispered prayers to the gods. The Egyptians filled their world with symbols. Every carving held meaning. Every color carried meaning. Even simple objects were believed to possess spiritual importance. The color Gold represented eternity. Blue symbolized the heavens and creation. Green represented rebirth and life.
Black symbolized fertility and the rich soil left behind by the Nile floods.
Nothing was accidental. Their entire world felt connected together like one enormous sacred story. Even their temples were carefully designed to align with sunlight and stars.
Certain hallways illuminated only during special days of the year.
Some statues remained hidden in darkness, except during sacred ceremonies. Light itself became part of worship. Imagine entering one of those ancient temples. Massive stone columns towering above you, torches glowing softly against walls covered in hieroglyphs. The scent of oils and incense lingering in the air. Sandals echoing faintly against smooth stone floors. And somewhere deeper inside the temple, the quiet chamber where only priests were allowed to enter. The place filled with silence, so complete, it almost felt alive. The Egyptians believed the soul itself had many parts. One part stayed close to the body. Another traveled freely. Another carried memory and personality. Death, to them, was not truly an ending. It was a transformation, a journey into another existence. And because of this belief, they treated burial rituals with extraordinary care. Entire ceremonies lasted for days. Special prayers were spoken carefully. Protective amulets were placed within mummy wrappings. Every detail mattered. Every word mattered. Because they believed the soul was listening. Some tomb walls were covered with beautiful paintings showing gardens, rivers, birds, and peaceful moments from daily life. Not scenes of fear, not scenes of darkness, but scenes of comfort, of peace, of continuation. Almost as though they hoped eternity itself would feel calm and familiar. And perhaps, in some strange way, that idea still feels comforting today. The thought that somewhere beyond fear and uncertainty, there may simply be rest. The great pyramids themselves remain one of humanity's greatest mysteries. Even now, thousands of years later, people still wonder exactly how they were built. Massive stone blocks weighing tons were moved across the desert with incredible precision. Each side aligned carefully with the directions of the earth. Each structure built with astonishing patience.
The scale of it feels almost impossible.
And yet, there they stand, silent beneath the sun, silent beneath the stars, watching centuries pass like grains of sand drifting through the wind. Some ancient workers likely spent their entire lives helping build monuments they would never see completed. Generation after generation continued the work. Stone after stone, day after day. And somehow, there is something strangely beautiful about that kind of patience. A civilization building not for themselves alone, but for eternity. At night, the pyramids must have looked even more mysterious. Towering, dark shapes beneath moonlight, their edges glowing faintly silver beneath the stars. The surrounding desert completely silent. No engines, no city noise, only wind moving gently across endless sand. Sometimes travelers describe deserts as feeling almost dreamlike, as though time slows down there, as though the modern world disappears. Perhaps ancient Egypt felt that way too, a place suspended between earth and sky, between reality and myth. The Egyptians also loved stories. Stories of gods battling chaos. Stories of hidden kingdoms. Stories explaining why the stars moved across the heavens. One of their most famous beliefs described the sun god traveling across the sky each day in a sacred boat. At night, the god journeyed through darkness beneath the world, battling dangerous forces before sunrise finally returned once more. To the Egyptians, sunrise was not ordinary. It was victory. Every morning meant light had defeated darkness again. And perhaps that belief made the world feel hopeful. Even after the longest night, the sun always returned. There is something deeply calming about ancient Egyptian art as well. The careful symmetry, The quiet expressions on statues. The stillness captured in carved stone faces. Many statues appear almost timeless, neither smiling nor sad,
simply peaceful.
Watching endlessly.
Some statues remained buried beneath sand for thousands of years before being discovered again.
Imagine that for a moment. A face carved by human hands, surviving longer than entire kingdoms, longer than empires, longer than languages, waiting silently beneath the earth until someone uncovered it once more. History itself feels asleep beneath the sands of Egypt.
Entire cities still remain buried.
Hidden corridors still wait undiscovered.
The ancient doors remain sealed, and somewhere beneath the desert tonight, forgotten chambers still rest in complete darkness, undisturbed, silent, patient.
The Egyptians believed cats were sacred animals, connected to protection and grace. Many households cared deeply for them. Some temples even kept sacred cats watched over by priests. Imagine quiet temple courtyards at night.
Moonlight falling across smooth stone floors.
Cats wandering silently between towering columns,
Their eyes glowing softly in the darkness. Everything about ancient Egypt feels wrapped in mystery. Even the sounds of it feel distant now.
the splash of oars against the Nile,
The crackling of torch flames,
soft chanting echoing through temple halls,
footsteps across desert sand,
wind moving through palm trees beneath the stars, and perhaps somewhere far in the distance, music drifting softly through the night. Simple harps,
flutes,
voices singing ancient prayers no longer fully remembered. The ancient world has vanished, yet traces of it remain everywhere. In broken statues, in buried tombs, in faded carvings, in stories passed from generation to generation across thousands of years. And maybe that is why Egypt continues to fascinate people even now, because it feels both real and unreal at the same time. A place where history and dreams seem to overlap. A civilization so ancient, it almost feels mythical. And now, as your breathing grows slower and your thoughts begin drifting farther away, imagine yourself standing quietly beside the Nile, beneath a sky overflowing with stars. Warm desert air surrounding you. Ancient temples glowing faintly in the distance. The soft sound of water moving beside the shore. The world completely still, completely peaceful. And somewhere beyond the darkness, beyond time itself, the old gods continue their silent journey across eternity. The pyramids remain, watching beneath moonlight. The desert winds continue whispering across forgotten tombs. And the ancient world slowly drifts onward through endless night. So close your eyes now. Relax your mind. Let every thought become lighter, and allow the mysteries of ancient Egypt to carry you gently into sleep.